Well, ladies and gentlemen, I came across this interesting story. The idea of Vanderbilt, the number 14 team right now in the college football playoff, sitting at 10-2 in the SEC, playing a 13th game. And I was wondering because I remembered this kind of schedule quirk within college football to where teams could play 13 regular season games, but the game has to be in Hawaii or Alaska, apparently, due to some traveling thing. So they potentially could play a 13th game. Kind of ridiculous. I think you shouldn't be able to. But the idea is they play the 13th game on Hawaii's campus at their stadium, which really is a temporary stadium there. But they would play a team like Miami or they would play Utah. Apparently, they reached out to both Miami and Utah and said, possibly logistically, because of the travel, it's not something that's going to be happening. But this is a very intriguing story to look at this because you think about it, coming into this year and really halfway through, we thought, well, basically every SEC team or every SEC team that goes 10-2 is going to make the playoff. And how it worked out with Oklahoma going, 10-2 and some of these other teams, there were just too many 10-2 teams, 11-1 teams to where Vanderbilt, who really doesn't have a big win outside of the Tennessee game that just happened, to where they get left off of the playoff. And you've got the whole idea with Vanderbilt, they may never be here. Or they did just get a big 5-star quarterback commit, but they've got Diego Pavia. Right now, odds are moving in terms of the Heisman. Imagine him getting another game with Mendoza and Sayin above him, both playing each other this weekend. This kind of reminds me of like a COVID situation where they would just schedule games at random because they were trying to fill spots. But it's very interesting, if a development like this really leads to the idea of play-in games. Games that you play during conference championship weekend to get into the actual playoff, probably in an extended field format to where when they go to 16 teams or God forbid 24 teams, some of those spots will not be decided by the committee. They will be decided by play-in games, which would probably be structurally set up by the committee, but it gives them more of an inventory. And so on conference championship weekend, you see it's not a normal college football Saturday. You've got like one game at noon. You've got one game at 4. You've got 2 games at 8. They want more inventory. Gives them more ratings, more money. Vanderbilt is trying to do it for them. And it is an interesting idea. Look at Vanderbilt sitting at 10-2. If they beat Miami, obviously they'd be in front of Miami. But at that point, would you have to look at them being put them in front of Notre Dame? I mean, it's an interesting idea. It says Vanderbilt is not allowed to play a 13th game that's not a conference championship unless it's in Hawaii. And I believe also Alaska based on travel. Because I remember week 0, a team originally had 13 games scheduled. I think it was a team that was facing Hawaii in week 0 and then took one game off. And so they only played 12 games. But it's more of like a week 0 cork. And now they're trying to use it for the end of the season. If Vandy and Miami, Utah, whoever else play in the Rainbow Warriors host late Saturday, it's actually totally in the clear. So that would be Hawaii, the university, hosting Vanderbilt, and they'd be facing somebody. They say logistically, it's just not realistic. They can't do it. Maybe on short notice, the crazy travel. Maybe if they could play at a neutral site in the United States, there would be a higher chance of it happening. But they're not permitted to play a 13th game if it's not a conference championship, unless, I guess, it's outside of the lower 48. And they have to have a place to be a Division I football host, which would be Hawaii, because there's not going to be one in Alaska. So interesting, right? That reminds me of COVID. I mean, it's not going to happen. It doesn't look like, but because now it's Thursday night. I mean, we would have heard about it already. And you look at the resumes, you look at where Vanderbilt is. There has to be some desperation for Vanderbilt when you see the playoff chances. Where is Vanderbilt? But the overall playoff chances here, they do not have. Am I going crazy? I got to be going crazy. Is Vanderbilt listed at a 0% chance or something? I don't know what's going on here. Let me go to this. Like this is gonna annoy me. So they're listed at a 0.0% chance to make the playoff at 10-2. I mean, I guess that is true. No, that actually is true. They're not going to make it because they're behind 2 other teams before but I just figured they would be at least at like 1% chance to make it or something. because I was like, did they just leave Vanderbilt completely off? But even the FPI says there's a 0, so no wonder they want to play another game. And then you've got a team like Miami who's sitting at 11% chance. I mean, think about it. If you're Miami, you end up 11-2 with a win over Vanderbilt. Yeah, you'd probably get in over Notre Dame at that point, because then the head-to-head becomes more meaningful, and the extra win against a ranked team, SEC team. Yeah. I mean, but I don't think the game is going to happen, but I'm just saying, because at this point, I don't think there's really any way Miami makes it in. I've seen some people say, well, maybe they might decide to jump Miami after this week over Notre Dame, but I think the only drama would be BYU winning. It knocks Notre Dame out. That's it. But I think the way college football evolves is with play-ins, and it's probably all gets decided through that. And so the committee maybe ranks like the first 4 or the first 8 teams, and then there's a bunch of play-ins after that to decide the seeding and decide who makes the playoff. I'm not exactly sure the structure, because I don't know how big the playoff is going to get. Because if they go to 16 teams, obviously it's going to be a lot different than doing play-ins for 12 teams or whatever they end up going to, 24 teams. Those are the two numbers, 16 and 24, that have been thrown around. So, yeah, in terms of this, another thing people keep talking about Alabama. You know, Alabama did lose to Florida State. That's a terrible loss. Now, people excuse it because Alabama does have a pretty good resume. I mean, I haven't really looked at Bama's resume recently. You know, the win over Georgia is just massive for them. It's so huge. Beating Vanderbilt, that's another good win. The Missouri win, not very good anymore. The Tennessee win, not very good anymore. The LSU win, not very good. So some of the wins have not aged well, which is typical because these are SEC teams. They're going to face each other. But still, at Georgia, that win, and then versus Vandy, those are two really good wins for Bama. Like, that's the reason. And then they go 10-3, and then people are like, well, should they be out? Well, that's an extra game that they're playing because they made their conference championship. Are you going to really punish that? That's part of the reason they jumped Alabama in front of Notre Dame. They confirmed that Alabama as a 3-loss team is going to make it, because they knew if Bama lost, they would have to move Notre Dame below Alabama after Bama just lost, with Notre Dame being idle, and it would have been a very bad look. So they had to actually shift Bama to 9 instead of 10 and put Notre Dame at 10, because Notre Dame is the team that's on the bubble. I think they've gotten by the whole Miami thing. I think they'll make it over Miami, but you have a situation now to where if BYU wins, Notre Dame will be out. There's no other option. Now, I mean, BYU is 12-point underdogs, but that is kind of the situation. That's why Notre Dame's only at a 59% chance to make it. I think it should be higher than that. You know, they give there's like some variables at play in terms of the low chance that maybe Miami does end up jumping Notre Dame because of the head-to-head, but I don't think it's going to happen. But, yeah, that's interesting that that Vanderbilt was trying to schedule a game in Hawaii with either, I mean, Utah, I don't think really has a chance at all at this point. But I mean, it'd be another really solid win. Like, you look at where Utah is in terms of FPI, I think they're still like top 12. Oh, they're number 9th in terms of FPI. And they also have a 0% chance to make the playoffs. So you look at it is pretty insane when you look at this. Like, look at the teams ranked in terms of FPI playoff: 100, 59% chance because Notre Dame's the number 3 team in FPI. 100, 96, 11% chance. That's Miami. 100, 0 is Utah. 100, USC is ranked very high in terms of FPI. Ole Miss is at 100. Texas, yeah, maybe Vanderbilt will versus Texas in a rematch. They should do that game. Texas is another team that's not going to make it, and you know, that was another tweet that I saw, and more people are starting to say this. They want them to cancel the Ohio State game because Texas fans are saying, well, if they just played a cupcake group of 5 school instead of Ohio State, they'd be in. The problem with that is, I mean, their non-conference schedule would be probably the worst in FBS, and maybe the committee would punish them for that because the other 3 non-conference games they played were so horrifically bad. Who was it? Like UTEP and Sam Houston. And it was just so bad. So if you don't play Ohio State, you probably have to replace them with at least a decent Power 4 team. And maybe you beat that Power 4 team. And yeah, you can make that argument. But I don't think they're going to cancel the second half of their home and home with Ohio State because they're hosting. They want that revenue. That's a huge game for them on campus. They're not going to cancel it. Now, if they were going to Ohio State, they might cancel it. The reason they had to move Bama in front of Notre Dame was because you can't move Notre Dame below Bama after Bama loses, because Bama could lose to Georgia, obviously, but it's going to be deemed a quality loss unless they get absolutely blown out. Now, I guess if Alabama gets absolutely blown out, maybe you could start talking about, because there might be a chance, but even still, there's like a 96% chance Bama makes the playoff. It's just extremely high. They'd have to lose and maybe have injuries and stuff. I mean, it'd have to be other things that we really can't predict for Bama to miss the playoff at this point. And then maybe they would let Miami in just because of the way it's structured with the auto bids. You have the auto bids taking up the 11th and 12th spots. And it's possibly two group of five teams as well, or it's a group of five team in Virginia, which is people are not going to be happy. And really, they are going to have to redo this. This is a really, really bad system that they have right now. The issue is when you give these auto bids to conferences that are not equal to each other, it creates problems like this. And I understand the idea of March Madness and you want to give group of five team a chance. It doesn't really work in football, though. Very rarely will you see an upset like that or a Cinderella run. The teams are just not even close in terms of talent. I mean, North Texas is probably going to be like 20-point underdogs no matter who they face if they end up making it, or Tulane or James Madison, whoever it is. So that's basically just an interesting idea for that'd be awesome, honestly, if they actually played in Hawaii against a team. It'd be weird. It would feel like one of the COVID situations, one of the COVID games with a very little crowd. So I don't even know how that would work. But this is really setting the stage for them to do this in an actual structured practice and a format where there will be playing games on conference championship weekend. Whether that comes next year, I don't know how proactive they're going to be with it, or the year after. Maybe they wait till the year after, they keep it at 12 teams, and then they switch it. Maybe they switch and say there's going to be no auto bids or something. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're still going to do the Power 4 auto bids, but I don't know what's going to happen with the group of five. I think they actually, because of antitrust laws or something, they have to actually give the group of five an auto bid, but I'm not sure. I don't think so, because it didn't. That's not how it worked in a 4-team playoff. So, but either way, guys, that's just the update. Make sure you like the video down below. That's going to do it for this one.